Hi there. I wanted to briefly look at Gnosticism and Gnosis and the difference between them, very briefly, but I really wanted to talk about the four holy words and time, and the way that we should, as Gnostics, deal with the problem of matter. Uh, yeah, I mean, Gnosis is pretty straightforward. It's just what happens. The numinous experience, it has been called, the numinous experience of the perennial religion, and of a oneness, a feeling of oneness with God, however you wish to define that word. And many have tried to define that word in many degrees and many ways. Uh, and Gnosticism is the question mark what has happened. So first we have the exclamation mark, something happens, and then you want to know what has happened. And Gnosticism is supposed to, well, it's supposed to give you the tools to make you understand what has happened, to provide you with a means of finding a solution to what has just happened. And you could spend the whole of your life answering the question, what has happened? But it's a question that sometimes can lead people into very strange areas of experience or further experience, and very strange areas of thought experimentation. I certainly know it's done that for me. Anyway, what has happened? But sometimes you ask a question, what is going to happen, before anything actually does happen. And that's a bit naughty, really. You shouldn't do that. But I do that quite a lot of the time. What's going to happen before it actually has happened? So it's a bit like, crying before you're hit, kind of thing, really. Um, so that's that point over. But I was contemplating this morning about the whole of this, and it was all going round and round and round in my mind, and I wasn't getting anywhere, really getting into a bit of a mental funk over it all in the early hours of the morning as the grey light of morning crept over my windowsill. And then I returned to the four holy words, which I've coined the term four holy words many, many years ago, which is I love you, God. And it seemed to me that at that moment, you had the past, the present, and the future. The moment, as it might be, the moment of saying those four holy words. And upon saying those four holy words, I love you, God, and getting over the self consciousness of saying those words, I love you, God, as one might say, almost coming to the bridal chamber as a virgin, sort of blushing and self conscious and shy and coy about it because one has been a hard atheist and materialist and geneticist and scientist for many years, or even a hedonist for many years, and then you're saying, I love you, God. It makes you feel a bit of an idiot, to be perfectly frank with you. You feel a bit odd saying it. And it's one thing to theorize about theism, but it's another thing to actually say, I love you, God. As if the words, well, not as if the words were true, but actually the words are true. And it makes you feel a bit weird, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, at that point of saying the four holy words, time opens up, as it were. And you can see straight away that after you've said these words, the past is let go of, it's cancelled out, falls away, forgiven. And all events that have happened in the past are let go of, forgiven, I suppose. And everything that has been, is no longer. And that might seem an incredibly obvious thing to say, but emotionally it's an incredibly complex thing to say. And it's one thing to say, oh, well, the past is let go of, but then emotionally, it's something else again. And then we turn to the future. And the future is that matter is as it ever was. So although you let go of the past, it doesn't mean to say that things will not repeat themselves, or things will go up. Things that can go up will go back down again. The value of shares can rise and it can also fall. Bear that in mind. Empires come and empires go. Matter, and by matter I also mean that the worlds of the demiurge. So some of the matter is very refined matter, but it is still matter. Okay, some of this matter exists on the astral plane, on the etheric planes, many different planes, but it's still matter. And the thing about matter is that it's evil. Well, it's certainly flawed, which is the kind of averse spirit. And then when you come up here, evil, certainly in evil intent feeds off the flawed imperfections of matter, especially feeds off our fear, which is the primary reaction to the imperfections and the flaws of nature and of matter. And then you have certainly blind, desirous, lustful forces, blind forces, Newtonian forces, one might say, causality in all different directions, all the many directions of causality. But they're always blind, they're always inevitable. Inevitable is a Greek tragedy. And certainly hellish. For the people that are living dreadful, miserable, wretched lives, life is hell, and that cannot be escaped. And then finally, life is enslaved, and this is the idea here, is that everything is weighed down by a Saturnian current or spirit, enslaved to evil, enslaved to hellishness, and enslaved to the flawed, blind forces that direct and control everything within the matter, within the material world, and within the worlds of the demiurge generally. So you have the averse pentagram, which is that everything is flawed, hellish, etc. But then within matter, it is necessary, as a result of being inspired by the four holy words, perhaps on a good day, inspired to expend practical energy in cultivating the five things that are worth cultivating. Which is empathy, which is on the water side of things, altruism, which is on the fiery side of things, compassion, which is on the earth side of things, and kindness, which is on the airy side of things. And finally, on the spiritual side of things, as represented by the pentagram, you have the spiritualization of matter. And this brings me on to the very, very interesting and complex issue of the Eucharist, which is something I've been contemplating a while after watching Stefan Heuler's homily given to the Austin Diocese of the Ecclesiastica Gnostica. He's talking about the seven sacraments, and especially the sacrament of the Eucharist. And that's really for another video, because it's very interesting. It's called, and we call the spiritualization of matter, which also has alchemical implications, as it were. So we can see that if you apply practical energy to cultivating these five worthy things to cultivate within the awfulness and vileness of matter. Matter itself can sometimes, on occasion, in very limited amounts, be spiritualized and changed, and lives can be changed, and your life and the lives of others can be changed. And be that as it may, though, we ought to put an arrow which returns us to the four holy words, because it's easy, in fact, even within even cultivating the five worthy things to be cultivated, don't forget they are being cultivated within matter. So that means that, utopians, the devil laughs to see utopians led astray. The thing about utopianism and even altruism and selflessness is it can sometimes lead to quite great evil, in fact. and it is sometimes blind, and it is sometimes enslaved and enslaving, and sometimes it leads to hellish consequences. So very regularly, despite cultivating the four worthy things to be cultivated within the realms of the demiurge, within matter, you have to return regularly to the four holy words because they anchor you. They recite you, or re-establish you in the moment. And this moment, following Nietzsche's idea that every moment is repeated infinitely, this moment of saying "I love you, God" is extrapolated or extended infinitely out in all directions into the transcendental realm of the transcendental God. And this one moment, we have a moment of sense of self, which is the I, in capital letters. And then we have love, which equals bliss, and that's extended infinitely. And then we have you, which of course is referring to God in this case, but it is a general sort of formula meaning everything other than the ego. Which that's what EU means in this particular context. And then finally, God is all. So God is a bindu, a point, which expands everywhere, spirals out infinitely, and we join that spiral dance into infinity. So that's basically why the four holy words are very important. And however you say them, and however regularly you say them, you should say them as a mantra. And the Mahanivana Tantra also says about mantras that they should be meaningful. In other words, you should know what the meaning of the mantra is. So you should look at the meaning of the words "I love you, God," and it's pretty obvious if you say them in your mother tongue what they mean on a superficial level. But you should also contemplate on the words "I love you, God." Okay, they're words worth contemplating on. And when said all together, they anchor you to the moment of a moment, of a preparatory moment into which Gnosis can flow, if that makes any sense to say that. Probably it doesn't make much sense to say that, but anyway, I'll say it anyway. And from this Gnosis, we can then ask, what has happened, and what has happened, as far as I can see, is the unfolding of time, and the past. It gives way, and the moment is supreme, and the future is as it has ever been, until, of course, such time as matter implodes in on itself, like the scorpion poisoning itself in a ring of fire, and then all will become void, will cancel out. 2 equals 0, with the famous Crowellian formula, 2 equals 0. Plus 1 plus minus 1 equals 0. And then within 0, you will have the infinite. And so the 0 will implode and will also transcend itself to become infinite. But I mean, I must stop now because I'm beginning to go into kind of sort of gobbledygook language, really, and we have to stick to consistency and the things which mean something to somebody, you know. Anyway, so I think the future actually is quite positive as long as it is anchored to the moment of the four holy words "I love you, God." And the past, well, that has flown by and washed away.